Brian, where are you right now?
I'm on a boat, dude. Yeah, I'm in Huntington Harbor. You said you wanted to search the city, and this is my city, buddy. The city where there's water
Wow,
very close.
that is
And
amazing.
this is my home away from home. This is Bingo. She is a 1977 Cal 34. She weighs a lot. She's kind of slow, but she's very sturdy. Got a big ass mast up here. What's actually kind of interesting, if you see, do you see that bridge over there? You might not be able to see, but there's a bridge there.
Yeah.
So when I go under that bridge, I actually take this whole mast and it comes down. See that big tabernacle? So this whole mast comes down so I can fit under the bridge.
Oh wow, you should.
What's up?
Hey, you should sail it down River Thames. We have bridges that open for you.
Oh yeah?
That's
That'd
amazing.
be
Yeah,
great.
Tower Bridge opens for you. Wow, that's so
So
cool. Like, can we get a tour of this
yeah,
place?
let's give it a little tour. So this is the main cockpit area here. We've got some nice cushions and everything like that. But I'm gonna flip it around so that I can give you the tour. So sailboats, I brought one of my video lights to light it up a little bit. As you see, we go with the anchor themed mats. What's cool about boats is that everything's really functional. So, you know, your kitchen is also your sink, is also everything. As you see, we have some serious supplies here. You know, sailors do like to drink, I'm not gonna lie. And what's cool about this living area is that it's not only a couch, but this table right here, this actually folds down, and then it becomes a table, then it becomes a bed. And you've got another spot over here. And then this is, this is where the magic happens. This is the main 4 feet, and it pieces together to become a full bed. For those of you who are interested, yes, she does have a restroom. That's the restroom in there, very luxurious. That's the master bath. We have another closet there.
Where's the on-hand
This is an interesting
butler?
Right now I let him have the day off. So this is interesting. I found this at the bottom of the ocean as I was scavenging, and I think it's either an ancient pirate piece, but we call it the boar spoon. And so it stays here for good measure, just for good luck. But yeah, that's it. And I literally spend a lot of time here on this boat with Sin, and we cruise over to Big Geiger Cove. Look at all this technology. Look at this 1977 technology. Yeah, buddy.
Oh yeah,
And
I do love a good bilge pump.
And we just got some fuel, so we're at the fuel dock. So look at that. We got 10 gallons of diesel, which probably is going to last me all summer.
Wow, man, that's so cool.
All right. So you ready to get going? You guys think you can help me ship off? All right, my friends here at the gas dock in Huntington Harbor are going to help me ship off. I've got to get the boat started.
Oh, that's
all right. Thank you, gentlemen.
engine.
I appreciate it. That's 25 horsepowers of Westerby diesel engine. She hopefully will run forever. Fingers crossed.
Amazing. So where are you gonna sail us
All
to?
right.
Where are you gonna take us?
We're going to take you on a tour of Huntington Harbor. Yeah,
Amazing.
so we're in southern Orange County, which is in California. I know you're in London. I actually went to school at the University of Reading for a bit, so I miss getting out there. Yeah.
Very cool. What did you study
All right.
when you're in Reading? What was your major?
So I studied business economics and theater. Thank you, gentlemen. Maxim Fuels. If you guys ever need fuel and you're in Huntington Harbor, it might be the only place to go, but it's the best place to go. These guys are great.
They've cornered the market there. I like it.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, Huntington Harbor is an interesting area. It's a man-made harbor, and it's on the coast of Orange County. If you were to search for it, hence the search the city, and you have people that show their cities, well, this is kind of like my city. If I had a choice, I would probably be on the water more than not. But there's elements of land which I like. But for me, I grew up in a family of educators, and we always spent our summers basically on a boat, and so it's just part of me. And my life design is that if I'm not speaking, I hopefully am sailing, and ideally I'm doing both. So you talk about how you manifest things. Well, a couple years ago, one of my goals was to do more sailboat racing, And I just put it out there, and I ended up racing sailboats. And so it's been amazing. And then I thought to myself, well, how can I combine my passion for speaking with my passion for sailing? And so I just put it out there. And when I say put it out there, it's like, put it in my bio, put it out there online, talk to people about it. What are you all about? I'm about speaking and sailing. And I was talking with James Taylor the other day, who I'd love to connect you with. He's an amazing speaker and speaks on innovation and creativity. I just had a check-in call with him, and he said, how's the sailing and how's the speaking for the other? And essentially, my business partner, Leonard Kim, is calling. Leonard, I got to flush you.
This is one of the small downsides of doing it on a cell phone is you do get the regular kind of phone calls, but it's part of the fun.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Perfect. We're back in action.
All right. Something happened in the matrix there. Now, you know what? We are on a boat, so I'm not going to apologize.
No, absolutely not, and it's all part of the fun. So you were you're born and bred in.
So I was saying, I was talking with James Taylor, and
James, yes.
And I said it's either speaking. If I'm either speaking or sailing. And you know what he said to me? He said, Ryan, you need to watch the words that you choose to use, because you said speaking or sailing. I challenge you to start saying speaking and sailing. And I said, you're right. So I literally said, okay, if I'm not, I'm going to speak and sail. And I put that out there into the world. And here I am. I had this opportunity. And I was like, wait a minute, speaking and sailing. So this is a true manifestation coming true by just changing the word between or and. And if you think about it, we're talking about search. That can make all the difference in the world. The single word that you choose to use as a customer to connect with somebody on the other line of the internet.
I completely agree with you. We live in the margins, and it's the small things at the end of the day that make a big difference. I used to play golf when I was a kid, and my instructor said that if you change the degree of your club by 1 degree, you could be in a completely different trajectory the further you go. So I like that as an ethos. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and on that topic, one thing I like to when it comes to golf, and I love golf because it is so difficult and the victory is in the margins, I tell myself, form over force. Form over force. And that's so applicable to digital marketing because it's easy just to hit the boost button. It's easy just to look at any type of success as success, especially if you're early in the game. But it's really about form. It's about targeting the right audience at the right time with the right images, A/B testing to find out what that actually is. So I think search engine optimization is a lot more like golf than you'd think.
I completely agree. It's one of the interesting things that we kind of bang on about at Type A Media is the importance of brand and how that should be the starting point and how search is just one of the many channels. But ultimately, if you don't have brand strategy nailed, content strategy nailed, you're kind of, well, you're on a boat without a captain, really, because you don't know where you're going.
Yes, you are a boat without a captain. I love that.
So what have you been doing recently? So I understand you do a lot of speaking and a lot of touring around and things like that. Just give me a day in the life. Like, what have you been up to recently? Have you done any like cool talks or anything like that?
Any what? Cool talks?
Yeah, cool talks, conferences. Like I've
seen
cool some of your TED.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's my accent. I've seen some of your TED stuff. It looks really cool.
It's all right. Right. Yeah, my fourth TEDx talk just came out, just was published, which is kind of fun, and the idea is around the value in taking pause in conversations, in real life, before you hit the tweet button, across the board. And it's a fun short talk, it's about 6 minutes and 45 seconds, and it stems from so many conversations that I have with people, and I'm fascinated with how quickly everyone jumps on each other in the conversational sense. Like, as soon as you're done talking, I want to jump on. And it's like I pounce, and then you pounce, and then pounce. And there's actually a lot of science, some recent science behind the amount of time that it takes between those gaps in conversation, and it is as short as 0.2 seconds, okay? But science shows that it takes 0.4 to 0.6 seconds, which is like the blink of an eye, to actually retrieve words, formulate them into a sentence, and say them. So what's happening is that the time it takes us to formulate our response is larger than the average gap between two people talking, which means that people technically aren't really listening towards the end of a conversation, and they're just waiting for social cues and signals to then jump in on the conversation. And when you take pause and you let people finish what they're saying and you let them talk and you let them think, the whole world opens up. Like, communication is not a competition. And I love that as a concept because we're just in this fast-paced world, but get on a sailboat, cut the engine, relax a little bit, and just sort of let things play out. Because when you cut someone off, you're cutting off what they would have said after that. And the final thing I'll say about this is that there's a lot of crazy stuff that you have no control over in this world. But the one thing you have absolute 100% control of is the time you choose to take before you choose to speak. And that is a power that people are not taking advantage of.
Why do you think they're not taking advantage of it? Do you think there is a bunch of, I get social norms and things like that. I find people with high nervous energy really can't slow down and talk. Do you think it's physiological? Do you think that it's all kind of happening automatically?
I think as I cut you off, I'm like, I think in a general sense, it's excitement. I think people are excited to share their opinion. And, sometimes, actually, this is kind of funny. We're going here. Let's show you something real on a boat, which is this thing, which is your radio, right? And so when you got one of these, the trick is only one person can talk at a time. You push it and you talk, and then you let go and they talk. And you push it and you talk and let go. But the reality is that forces people to actually finish what they're saying, right? Roger that, over and out, and then the next person talks. And so that technology actually improves your communication because only one person can talk at a time. But when you have two people or three people just want to, I think people are excited. They want to participate. And culturally, when we add in, we feel like we're adding value. But to be honest, you can add a lot of value by not adding in, but instead listening in and then taking what people say and choose what you say to be that much more relevant.
That's so fascinating to me. So I remember doing really early on, I used to work for a bank and they tell you negotiations training. And one of the things they tell you is when you're negotiating is say your piece and shut the fuck up. Sorry, excuse my language. Because the moment that you use silence as a power play ultimately. With regard to speech and clarifying and getting your message together, is this something that you're out there speaking to clients about and consulting on? It's talk me through your kind of world.
Yeah, if you think about the drivers of success, I argue that effective communication is probably one of the most up on the top of the list. And I like to think of confidence in communication is what really creates clarity. Now, my target market, who I enjoy working with, are executives who lead large organizations, specifically scale-ups that are 10 million in revenue and they're trying to get to 100 million in revenue. And the challenge of communicating the brand values, the goals, the mission, the vision, the problem that you're solving, the solution, all of those things becomes exponentially more difficult based on more people in the company. And it's actually, if you have 3 people, there's only so many different ways to connect. But once you jump to 50 or 60 people, there are thousands and thousands of different possible connections. And so what I enjoy doing is helping companies and executives help to really clarify the words they choose to use to explain what they do. And on top of that, this may sound harsh. So a warning, a disclaimer, this is going to sound harsh, but I don't care what you do and I don't care what anybody does, okay? I care more about the problem that you solve. I care about the problems that people solve. Now, I'm not trying to be cynical and saying I don't like you. It's not about you. It's about not necessarily caring what you do. And really, it comes down to what's in it for me. We are selfish creatures for sake of survival. We have to do what's best for us at all times. Granted, this is not saying you shouldn't be altruistic and do nice things for other people. You should always do good and be kind, and you should always help people when you can. But from a business standpoint, an interest standpoint, I argue that people care more about the problem that you solve than what you do. And so I have this really fun exercise called the 3-1-3 method. And this is something I speak across the world. And this is something that I incorporate into my daily life. I have a radio show called The 313 Show, and I do consulting on it. It's part of a book that I just wrote called Ditch the Act, which is coming out in October. But the premise is, if you believe that people care more about the problem that you solve than what you do, right? If you do believe that to some extent, and it is so crucial to be able to explain a problem that you solve without telling people what you do. And that's a very difficult thing. But I want to know, do you believe people are more interested in the problems that others solve as opposed to what others do? Just, I'm not going to judge you, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think this is, in particular in our industry, in the search industry, one of the biggest problems that I see is exactly that. So selling, product-based selling instead of solutions-based selling, because the clients don't care about what the deliverable is, they care about what you're going to do to solve their problem. So I'm 100% on board with you. It's very hard to get there because that's a little bit of a layer of abstraction away from perhaps what you sell or what you think. So how would you convince people that that's the right way to go, and how would you help them reframe to start thinking like that and being kind of more effective communicators in that respect?
So that is a great question. That is the ultimate question. And I would help people convince themselves with a very small thought experiment, and then working them through this 313 method could actually help them come up with a message here. So let's start as a thought experiment. Have you ever had people ask you what you do?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time, right? So we agree that this is a question that will continue to come up. Like probably the most frequent question that is asked, like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? If we understand, and my goal here is to convince you of a different way of thinking about things and a different way of taking action. Imagine for a minute the next time somebody asks you what you do, instead of telling them what you do, you simply say, it's kind of funny, but it's really not what I do that's important. The problem that I solve, that's what's important. And then you stop talking. And the person that you're talking to 99.999% of the time is gonna kind of feel in that silence, they're gonna have a chance to think, and then they're gonna go, so what problem do you solve? And then you now have gotten them to step into the conversation. Now you say, the problem is people talk too much. In fact, when they talk past the sale, they lose the deal, they go broke, and then they end up having you go get a regular job. That's the problem. Now, I could then ask them, do you think that that's a problem? Yes or no? Just pretend that you asked me. Do you think that's a problem?
Yes.
Okay. Do you personally have that problem sometimes?
Oh, all the time.
Okay. Now, is it something that you're interested in learning how to fix or improving anytime soon?
Absolutely. It's a constant life quest.
Okay. Then guess what? I can help you out.
All right. Tell me how.
Now, you see what just happened there?
Uh-huh.
I got you interested in what I do without even telling you what I do. Okay? That is the thought experiment. And I challenge people to try it. And if you're uncomfortable in a networking situation, try it in an Uber. You know, the Uber driver's like, hey, what do you do? It's not what I do, it's the problem that I solve. Stop. The Uber driver will go, well, what's the problem? And then you tell them the problem, you ask if it's a problem, you ask if they want to do if they have the problem, you ask if it's a problem that they want to solve sometime soon, and if they say yes, I can help you out. You can get people interested in what you do without telling them what you do, and that is just like, that is wind from the gods to give your sailboat momentum.
I totally agree, man. I was literally just talking to someone of something very similar. It's going into solutions-based selling instead of product-based selling, ultimately. Way into another interesting bit.
It's kind of nice out. So did that somewhat convince you to think about the importance of the problem that you solved? Right? Mm-hmm. We're just gonna come up here and sit because this is what I'm looking at.
Oh,
right? Not a bad view.
So jealous.
And when I'm sailing across the Catalina, I'll literally sit up here. This is one of my favorite spots, and it's just silent, and the waves This is a simulation of waves here. Simulation. So I talk with people and I convince them that they can get people interested in what they do without really telling them what they do. And people are so focused on trying to tell people what they do, but people don't care what you do. And so I help people through this 313 exercise to clarify what that core messaging is. And everything is built from there. So a big part of my business is helping executives build personal brands, helping individuals build personal brands. Because at the end of the day, your personal brand is how, sorry, it's getting a little chilly out here. Your personal brand is how you communicate what you do. But the same argument stands. People don't care as much about what you do. They care more about the problem that you solve. So I help leaders learn how to position what they do in terms of the problems that they solve. And once you have that clarity, then you can have the confidence, then you can help your employees and other people who are potential ambassadors learn how to better represent the company and learn how to better represent yourself online. And the one thing that I'll say as a preface is that to build a personal brand is not to just make yourself look like a badass. In fact, if you do that, you will isolate yourself. You will not be as relatable. And that's what our book, Leonard Kim and I, check him out. He lives and breathes authenticity. If something goes wrong, he'll share it. If something's not right, he'll share it. If he doesn't feel good, he'll share it. And those are the tweets. Those are the posts that actually connect with people. So helping people get bios where it makes them relatable and helping people create content that actually exposes a little bit about what they're feeling. Like I drove down all the way from my house to my boat this morning and I forgot this little cool tentacle piece that I used to latch it on. So I get all the way here and like, I have to go back and get it. So what did I do? I tweeted how frustrated I was and the tweet blows up and everybody wants to help me out. They're telling me I maybe avoided an accident and that's the world speaking to me and I feel good about it. So where does this all come together? It's crucial to be able to understand what you do in terms of the problem that you solve. And I've got this method to help people tease that out. And then once you figure that out, when you can communicate all of this in an authentic way by just being real and being human, that's where the true connection and engagement comes. That's where the inbound leads come. So my company InfluenceTree, we don't really do much search engine optimization. We don't do much marketing because people are searching for the problems that they have, hands down. Okay, I'm gonna go. if I don't move, I'm gonna run into this house.
Okay. That really speaks to
so
me.
What do you think?
One of the kind of dirty little secrets of our SEO agency is we don't get clients via SEO at all. We get it through completely different means. Do you ever find that when you're speaking to executives that sometimes when they're trying to work out the problems that they solve, they perhaps don't know, or they find it very hard to verbalize what that is because they're so stuck into, I've got these departments, I've got these products that I sell, and this is my audience, and blah, blah, blah. And when you extrapolate out, and you're like, yeah, that's great that you've got these products and these services, but what problems it's solving for who? Do you find that people sometimes have a disconnect, or they struggle to write it down or verbalize it? Is that what you're doing, is getting them to a place to actually get that out of them? Because I always find that one of the hardest things.
Yeah, and I would give executives a lot of credit because they're very savvy. They're in their position because they really are experts and they know what they do. But that doesn't mean that they can communicate that well to others, to investors, to employees, and things like that. When it comes specifically to teasing out the problem that an executive solves, I find typically that they have a harder time deciding between this problem they solve, this problem they solve, this problem they solve, and this problem they solve. And then that department solves that problem. And really, when you are forced to say, just tell me the one biggest problem that you can solve, it's a very, very difficult situation because you're like, no, but it's that one. But then, and so this idea and this conversation that happens in your head to whittle down, it's not that they don't know. Like, they're smart. They know the problems that they're solving. But being forced to choose one from a communication standpoint is crucial, because if I say it's not what I do that's important, it's the problems that I solve, and I solve this problem and that problem and this problem. So are those problems? Guess what? There's 3 of them. So if that doesn't resonate as a problem, I throw the whole situation out. Okay. And what amazes me and I'd love to get your opinion on this. There's a lot of studies and statistics out there that show that brand messages, right, corporate messages, completely are outperformed if they're shared on the channels of the employees versus the brand channels, right? So if there's a new product coming out, the study I'm referring to is like over 500% more reach and 8 times more engagement when the employees shared this new product as opposed to the corporation. And the important part there is for executives to realize just posting something on your corporate account is not going to, it's not going to resonate. People are sick of these corporate messages. So if you can articulate and get help with articulating and then have that cascade downwards, what about the receptionist when she tells people what she does? Is she excited about it? Is it connected to the bigger problem that's being solved at the company? Is it something that she's embarrassed to talk about because she doesn't know what to say? Because we all are faced with this question, what do you do? But when you empower people with letting them know how the problem that they solve, receptionists solve one of the biggest problems that companies have. The problem happens if nobody answers the phone, right? If customers' complaints go unattended to, stuff starts to boil over. So imagine a receptionist, instead of I'm a receptionist, I solve one of the biggest problems at my company and I love it. That just changes the dynamics of the way that you empower your employees to carry themselves into the world, to be brand ambassadors and evangelists of what you do. Because let's bring it back to search engine optimization. Let's pretend that there's this magical Alexa that is listening to everything, and it's probably happening on our phones right now.
Yeah.
But people don't just find people based on search. They search with their words. Hey, do you know anybody? I've got this issue. My hand's hurting right now. I've got this problem. There's a real search that happens within the real world. And so if you focus just on search engine optimization online, you're missing the whole point of when an employee says certain things, when customers say certain things, how do you get people to identify? Ding, ding, ding. I can solve that problem. It happens to be the company that I work with. I'd love to get you in touch with somebody at my company who can help. So I see search engine optimization as a metaphor of really understanding your target market, understanding their problems. And if you can't describe the problem that you're solving, how are you going to connect with them when they search for their problem? And I'm just I'm all excited right now, not only because I'm on a boat, but I'm on a podcast. So this is a boatcast. Hashtag boatcast. Actually, from now on, video. Actually, talk about manifesting. This came as an accident of James Taylor telling me to say the word "and" instead of "or." So now when people hit me up for video podcasts, I'm gonna be sounds good. Guess what? I'm gonna be on a boat.
Boatcast.
Right?
It's the future,
Boatcast.
and it's so engaging to you in a kind of very natural, kind of relaxed environment makes all the difference as well. And being the authentic you this is part of it, right? You've probably heard a lot of podcasts that are very overproduced, and they hit the little things they want to say, then they say their piece, and off they go. One of the things I actually really struggle with is being super authentic online. Do you come up with problems with that when you're speaking to executives, or they're maybe a bit I feel a bit nervous about it, or perhaps they're a little older and they're not super au fait with digital? How do you get them over that kind of inertia or that fear of being authentic and not scripted?
So in our book, we talk about this, and we talk about 5 levels of exposure, right? We actually pitched the book as Expose Yourself, and we sold it as that to McGraw-Hill, and then they helped us change it to Ditch the Act. But the idea of exposing yourself is really synonymous with being authentic. And level 5 exposures, you never talk about, which is sex and drugs and politics and all the stuff that could easily create splits. So the answer to your question is in understanding how to work through these levels and build up to it. Now, a level 1 exposure is things that have to do with yourself, things that you're feeling, things that you're frustrated with, your actual emotion at the time. And the trick is to convince people to just take that first small step, to share on Twitter that they're having a hard time deciding between coffee or tea. That's something that literally happened to me the other day. I was like, coffee or tea, coffee or tea. So I tweeted, coffee or tea, ? This is a level 1 exposure. Typically, I wouldn't go out there and have people help me with this. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments having people chirp in. And why? Because it was not a broadcast. It wasn't, here's a podcast. It wasn't, here's my talk. It wasn't, come to this event. It was me being human. So for an executive, and we work with executives to get them comfortable with it. So what is a low-level exposure that you can do? And if you start to share it, you'll see immediate results. Like me sharing that I was frustrated, I forgot this thing. Normally, I wouldn't share that. An executive is probably not going to share that, but that's what makes people human. Yeah. And another example I'm going to give, so if there's an executive listening, they think it's not just about tweeting whether you want coffee or tea, it's about your stories. Now, we've all had stories of success and failure, but we typically lean towards sharing the ones that are success. And that's a big disservice to yourself. So part of the book, we have this exposure resume where you identify things that you don't want to share with people. And then you identify what really happened, what were the learning lessons, because your experience is just one step away from your expertise. And if you claim to be an expert without openly sharing the expertise and the lessons that you've learned, then you're not going to become as relatable as the next expert. Now, I've had tons of failures. I'm sure you failed a bunch too, and we've all failed. But the idea of my connection is poor. So I'm going to spin around here.
I'm getting you perfect. I love the idea of putting the fails in there as well. Like you're completely on. One of the things we started doing this year, agency credential decks, which are usually like case studies and like the crazy things that you've done that have done insanely well, but that's not a real representation of what happens day to day. So we started putting in our fails, and that sold way better when you've got, here's all the stuff we've done amazingly, here's the clients that we done work for and it didn't work out, and our conversion rate is going up, not down. So I'm with you. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So here's an example of a bio. If you go to, and let's call this the executive bio challenge. Go to a high-level executive or a public figure that you respect, that maybe you see, and go to try to find their bio. One, it might be difficult to find their bio, which is a mistake. But two, when you read their bio, it's likely to be short, and it's likely to be, I'm a badass, I'm a badass, I'm a badass, I'm a badass, I'm a badass. That's typically what happens. So if you extend that bio and actually share what happened in your childhood, your relationship with your parents, how you loved growing up with pets, how you sailed when you were a kid, how that one time things didn't go right, and how you wanted video games, so you decided to become a paper boy. And then your dad got upset at you because you became a paper boy. He expected more from you. And so you got creative and started to teach coding, and that's what got you into software. And then all of a sudden, now you're an executive at Cisco. For me, the connection there is the guy liked video games. I liked video games when I was a kid, and I tried to scrap. I did Christmas lights instead of doing paperboy route. And so I'm like, I can relate to this guy now. So it's not about being up there and being vulnerable and tripping on your way to stage and being like, right? It's not about doing anything on purpose. It's just about letting people have a little bit more insight to who you really are. And it's a surprising power that you have. Think about like the good friends that you have, and if you have an issue or a challenge and you go talk to them and you share with them what's going on, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, what can I do to help? I'm here to support. Like, I want to help you. That same type of empathy you can tap into as an authentic leader. You don't always have to be like, rah. So it's a step-by-step process, but starting with level 1 exposures about the way that you're feeling. Here's my last example. So I do a lot of keynoting, and I was in Santa Barbara at this big conference, and I was about to go on, and I had this huge pimple that was like crowning on my forehead, and I was so irritated with it. So it's 30 minutes before stage, and I'm like stressing out, whatever, like you stress out about stuff. And I'm like, what do I do with this pimple? Do I pop it or not? So I texted that to my business partner, Leonard, and he's like, why are you texting me? This is a perfect example of a way that you can ditch the act and share it with everybody. I'm like, oh, okay. So I did it. I said, here's this pimple on my forehead. I'm about to go on stage. Do I pop it or not? I'm scared. Literally, the internet almost broke at that moment because there was like team pop it, team don't pop it. There's all these GIFs. It was so funny and hilarious. So I'm like, I felt really good about it. And there was advice to have one of the people do a little concealer because it was a 3-camera shoot. So this lady put some concealer on it. I felt good. I walk into this big stage, and you know how sometimes they have the software that pulls all the tweets with the hashtag of the conference?
Oh, yeah.
So on this huge stage, probably like a 40 by 70 foot stage, it is me and my face going like this with everybody's responses all up on the big screen, like before I go up on stage. And it was hilarious. But a funny tangential story. One of the cameramen was on Twitter, saw it, and actually put a filter on the camera so there wasn't even an issue, and nobody was like mad at me about it. They were just like, this guy's a real person. We all have pimples. This is hilarious. And I came on stage just like so excited, so pumped up, and it was one of the more authentic moments in my life. But if you asked me 2 years ago if I was going to share that I had a pimple online, I'd be like, no, because that's not cool. So those are a couple examples. What's really happening now, some decisions that you're making, and then you can move to level 2, which is arguments you might have with individuals or frustrations about things that are happening. And then as you get more comfortable, you'll start to see people connect more often. And that's where the magic is. I can't tell an executive, you've got to expose yourself and be more vulnerable. I've got to give them just a little taste of it and then have them see that, like that tweet, by example, was the most engaged tweet of a 4-day conference. And it's counterintuitive. Okay.
What just happened?
I almost hit this buoy. I almost hit that buoy. I was so excited and I looked up and I was like, oh crap. So, talk about rough and ready. I was like, ah, and then I looked, I was like, buoy, no, flip.
Evasive maneuvers. Love it,
Wow.
love it. So I love these.
Hey, the thing about
these
sailboats,
levels.
sailboats are very maneuverable. Real quick, sailboats are very maneuverable because they have a keel, and that
Okay.
means that they can spin on a dime. And so, if you are looking at, say, your ability to communicate, if you don't have a keel and you don't have it grounded and you don't have like a centerboard, then you're going to be all over the place. When you talk with people that are all over the place, you're not going to give them your business. All right, I'm done talking for a while. What do you think about all of that?
I really love this. I like the fact that it's all kind of frameworked out as well. It's so interesting because you've clearly zoomed out quite a bit and started to think of it from like a very strategic point of view, and then zoom back into actually making it tactical so these people can implement it. I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. So this is going to be in the book, right? So what was the book called again? It's not Expose Yourself. It's now.
No, the book is called Ditch the Act.
Ditch the Act.
Ditch the Act. And actually, we decided to personify our book, and we gave it a Twitter account. So if you do want to connect in the next few months as we ramp up, go follow @DitchTheAct, and it's an actual book Twitter account, and we're having a lot of fun with it. You can also go to ditchtheact.com, but we're building our splash page. The book comes out in October, but you can sign up for kind of being on the mailing list or a bit early. But what is so exciting about this book is that it's not sharing with people how to be amazing. It's sharing people how you are amazing, and if you learn how to systematically start to share who you really are, that's the way to differentiate yourself. And we're in a place, and I'd love to know your opinion on this. If I search for a certain type of expert, most of the people that come up look very similar. Their bios read very similar. There's not much differentiation. And if you're trying to stand out, but you are basically doing what everyone else is doing, then you're not standing out. So this idea of actually differentiating yourself by being yourself and sharing your experiences, both good and bad, focusing on the lessons learned, that's the content. See, here's the thing. People don't know what to create for content. You have so many stories in your past that you might not want to share because it's as you're coming up in the ranks. It's situations where you weren't an expert. It's situations where you fell on your face. And these are the different types of stories that you can utilize to reinforce your expertise. If you start off a thought leadership article about how you never got picked on the basketball team because you were picked on, so you went to go get your own ball and you came back and still nobody wanted to play with you, even if you had a ball. Like, that's a life lesson I learned in elementary school that I carry through my life. And it's embarrassing to share that story until I share it and see everybody come together and appreciate that. And everybody has their own not getting picked on a basketball team story. Now I'm connected with them. Now it makes sense.
I couldn't agree more. I think the sharing that stuff is something that I think a lot of people kind of struggle with, because they can't really put it in the context of business. But I think one of the things to remember is you do business with people, you don't do business with logos or anything like that, right? And it's always kind of the same. So telling those stories, one of the first jobs that I ever had, or one of the first little businesses I had, was selling potpourri door to door. Are you familiar with potpourri? It's like dried twigs that are scented.
Yeah, it smells good. I mean, you walk up to the door, I mean, at least you smell good, yeah.
Right, exactly. But I mean, it's not the coolest thing for a young pimply teenager to be doing. It doesn't exactly get the ladies selling dried flowers to your mum's friends.
Yeah, you're better off with the real flowers for the ladies, right? That's different.
That's it. That's the one. So like, you're on your boat just now, which is obviously a little bit of downtime, but you clearly get a lot done and a lot out the door. How are you doing all this stuff? Because I'm looking at your bio, I'm looking at your profile, I'm just seeing like an absolute, there's a book coming out, there's multiple launches, you're consulting, you're speaking, but you're also taking a bit of time for yourself. Like, how are you doing all this stuff but not being totally fried?
So,
have you got a secret cocaine habit you want to tell us about? Like, do you not sleep? How does it all work?
Actually, I sleep well. I go to bed relatively early. I wake up very early, and I make time for disconnecting because I'm at my best when I'm refreshed. And I've actually started something on Twitter called the #Cloud Challenge. I'm in an office, I'm in a building, I'm speaking, like all this stuff is crazy happening. I will go outside and just do this. And I'll just look up. Actually, I realize that this needs to be clamped. But if you just look up with me, like there's something mesmerizing about the clouds. And so for me, I call it ecotherapy, and it's really about having a healthy balance, because the drive I have for what I do comes from the fact that I love what I do. And so it truly is that adage of like, it's not work because I love what I do. And I mean, I get so excited, I almost run into buoys talking about this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But if I were to say a couple specific hacks that people can use, number one, get up earlier. I can't stress this enough. If you get up earlier and no one is around, there are no distractions. Sometimes I'll get more work done from 5 o'clock in the morning to like 8 o'clock in the morning, so much that like I could consider that a complete day. And so I'm able to do more than the average bear by simply getting up earlier. So that's tip number one. Number two, I'm a deadline guy. And there's a law called the Parkinson's Law. It's you will finish things in the amount of time that you have to get them done. I have a crazy deadline today for like 14 different things that I'm doing, all within one element. And it is only because it is due today that it is getting done. I swear. I've been putting it off and putting it off. I have a course that I'm teaching starting in spring, and I have to make a couple adjustments because I'm always trying to update the content. And I literally set a date, and I said, I have to have everything done by this date. And it is only because I set the date that it will get done. And so don't underestimate the power of deadlines. So get up a little bit early, create deadlines for yourself. And then I would say, as an overarching, I have a whole theory on this called the branding starship. And the high level of it is first decide where you want to go. So many people are working so hard, but they have no idea where they were going. They're just aimlessly creating content, hoping that it's going to stick. You have to figure out where you want to go. I know exactly where I want to go. There's a lot of activity, but it's not in a concentrated direction, right? Mm-hmm. I can be very inefficient on my sailboat. I can sail all day long and just cruise around and not get to any one location. And that's what a lot of people are doing. They think that more work means more productivity. It doesn't. It means knowing where you're going to go so you can pick and choose the work that you decide to do. Here's a real high level of the personal branding starship. This is something we cover in a personal branding course that I have. You can check it out, InfluenceTree.com. The branding starship. Step one, determine where you want to go. Like, there's a Big Tiger Cove, Catalina Island. I know the exact coordinates. I know where I'm going. I know that in 10 years, I'll be traveling around the world. Not that I'm not doing that now, but I'm going to be traveling, speaking, and when I'm in the area, I'm going to charter sailboats for a month at a time, and I will be speaking and sailing. There will probably be a point where I go to exotic locations, charter boats, and bring executives and give them coaching on boats. Like, I know where I'm going, therefore I will get there. So know where you're going. Then do what I call an asteroid audit. An asteroid audit, like thinking of the space imagination, right?
Yeah.
An asteroid is anything that takes your time. Anything that The sailboat is an asteroid. Going to the
that.
gym is an asteroid. Watching Netflix is an asteroid. But when you do an asteroid audit, you take a second and you identify where are you spending your time. Once you identify where you're spending your time, then you ask yourself 2 magic questions. Is this asteroid helping me or hurting me to get to the destination? And you find out by saying, is this on brand and does it make me money? Those 2 principles guide my asteroids. And if an asteroid doesn't make me money and is not on brand, I will blow up that asteroid and I will no longer land on it, okay? But if that asteroid makes me money and is off brand, there's probably a chance I'd have to really, really think about it. It's gotta be good money. If it's on brand and it doesn't make me money, I'll have to consider it to see if it's a larger picture for where I'm going to go. So people take on too much and they take on things that don't align with the direction that they want to go. So they're spending time on things that is not working towards this destination. So find out where you want to go, do an asteroid audit, figure out what elements you're taking time to spend your day, and then evaluate, is this time invested stopping me from getting to where I want or starting for me where I want? Now, for me, for example, I keynote speak all around the world. That's on brand, that makes me money. I have a job at University of California, Irvine, where I'm a communications manager. I oversee over 300 employees and 3 different divisions and all these undergraduate programs. And that makes me money and it's on brand because I'm using that as a platform to help academic leaders understand the value of vulnerability and branding and new forms of communication. Because academic leaders, deans, vice provosts, and chancellors, those individuals, those executives, they could benefit just as much by ditching the act and better connecting with students and raising more money and really revolutionizing the way that we teach education. I come from a family of educators. I love education. Higher education is on brand. That's an asteroid I'm on. I've got 2 podcasts and 1 radio show, right? That's a lot. But the one Scale Up Heroes podcast, I interview executives from scale-up companies, 10 million in revenue above. Those are my customers. My World of Speakers podcast, I get to connect with speakers from around the world. They help me get onto those stages. And my 313 show is a way to run people through the 313 method to help convince them that this is something they should bring me to their company to speak on. It's a lot of time invested, but all of those asteroids help me refuel, recharge, and get to my next destination.
I love that. A lot of people probably don't have those frameworks, do they? I mean, this is a funny thing, right? So, like, defining what those asteroids are at the start, what a great exercise. I imagine it's probably what you do with your consulting business, talking executives through. Is this also going to be in the book? So already there's a couple of things that I really want from this book. I want to know the other 5 areas when it comes to vulnerability and sharing. We got the extremities. The middle bit sounds like it could be really exciting as well. And also this part as well. Like, so how did you start coming up with this stuff and kind of developing it? Is this all personal experience that you've then started developing? You're developing this stuff in the wild with like real-time feedback? So I imagine you're dealing with some pretty high-end people, right? You're not dealing with like the guy who runs Jim's auto shop down the road. These are Fortune 500 companies. Yeah,
so there's a few things to unpack, and I'm going to go in reverse order. Okay, so first you asked about all 5 levels of exposure. Then you asked about how we've developed these strategies and how that relates back to the clientele that I work with.
Yes.
So there was what is called an inciting incident in my life. So a good example is, let's say that you feel like you're gaining weight, but you don't do anything about it. And then all of a sudden there's this inciting incident. And that is the moment that your pants rip during a presentation because you're too heavy. Like, that is the moment, the inciting incident that things change. I was at my job at UCI. I actually got brought on to run their undergraduate entrepreneurship program, and I loved it. We did so many fun things. We got all this great exposure. We helped 2,400 students start companies in under 18 months,
Whoa.
But I did it unconventionally. Guerrilla marketing, things that the university had no idea was happening, got in trouble all the time. I got called in unannounced to my boss's office, and I was convinced that I was getting fired. That's it. I'm getting fired. Like, I just felt it in my brain. So we sat down. They're like, Ryan, we've been seeing this and all this stuff. I'm like, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. And then he went, no, wait. What you're doing is working. And we like it. And no one's ever done this before. And they actually gave me a new position that they created. And long story short, they've moved me up from there. But the inciting incident happened right before he told me that I wasn't fired, because I was convinced that I was fired. And at that moment, I said, you know what sucks? No, it totally sucks is that every time I start a company and it fails, I'm back to zero. Every time I invest into a company and then I leave the company, I have nothing left of it. Like, constantly you put your life into these efforts and you're like, look at me, this is what I'm all about. This company, this product, this. And then when that goes away, you're left with nothing. So I was so frustrated at actually having to start over again. I made a decision from this point on, everything that I do, I'm going to use it to build my personal brand. I'm going to build it so that whether something starts or fails, no matter what, I'm going to use that as a stepping stone. So that was a personal decision that I made. And that's when I started to take action. It took, like, if you think that you're overweight, you can think that forever until that actually happens to you, and then you split your pants and you got to make decisions. So that was the inciting incident. What I started to do is I started to write. I started to try to get gigs. I wrote like 50 articles one summer, and I just did everything I thought I needed to do, and I got zero traction. Nobody was reading my stuff. Nobody was wanting me to speak. I wanted to do it, but nobody wanted me to do it. And so I ended up at a party at Keith Ferrazzi's house. Keith Ferrazzi, check him out. An amazing book called Never Eat Alone, and he has a new book coming out called Co-Elevation. But he's like a master networker, and he brought all these entrepreneurs to his house, and his whole thing is radical candor, and that he thinks people care more about helping you with your problems. So we're randomly sat around these people, all highly successful people, and instead of saying, I'm Ryan, this is what I do that's amazing, he challenged us to say, introduce yourself and tell us what is going wrong personally and professionally in your life. It got real quick. And I was sharing, I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, but nobody will hire me to speak. Nobody's reading my articles. I'm so confused. I don't get the social media stuff, and I'm just so frustrated. I'm having issues with it. Up. All these people. This other guy named Leonard Kim, he's like, I've got 10 million reads on my content. Everybody wants me to speak. Everybody's calling me for interviews. Everybody wants my attention. But I just broke up with my girlfriend. I'm not feeling good about it, and I don't really have the confidence to be up on stage. So I afterwards went to him. I said, look, you help me, I'll help you out. Shook hands, and that was the start of using me as a test pilot for what he had done. So he had me arrange everything that I was doing in a big list. Then he evaluated the list, and he said, you know what? You are doing everything correctly, but in the wrong order. And that is what happens to most people. You're doing this, you're creating content, you're trying to speak, you're writing, you're doing, but you don't get any traction. You don't get any more followers. You don't get any more deals. You don't land any more clients. And so he literally said, look, let's rearrange these things. Let's start back in the top. Oh, and by the way, I've been wanting to start a company to teach people this. Why don't you join me as a partner, and we'll use you as a test excuse. I'm like, okay. So I invested, we got together, we created this course based on what to do in the right order. And not only was the course successful, but in that process, I learned that part of the reason why people weren't connecting with me is because I was putting on this act. I was like, I'm amazing. Look at me. I'm the best speaker. I know this. I'm an entrepreneur. I know this, which is what you kind of default fall into because you think that's what people want to see. But Leonard helped me to realize that the most connection I have is when I'm actually being real with people. And I had a skeleton in my closet that I was very fearful of sharing with the world, actually trying to like hide it from the world. And it actually came up right as I got the ability to write for Fortune magazine. And people called me on it. They found something online that I had been trying to hide, and it almost blew everything that I had worked for up. Now, I had a company that I left the company, and it ended up getting investigated by the FTC. And 5 years later, I got dragged into a gnarly process in which I settled, and I got out of there on good terms. But you find it online, and it's nasty. Like, why would anybody want to trust me if I'm associated with this? And that for me was the moment where I had to come to terms with getting in front of it. And it's in my bio, and I talk about it on Boatcast, and I talk about it And all of the lessons that I've learned from that is truly what is giving me my expertise. The reason I am who I am is because I went through all that bullshit. And as soon as I saw the power of starting to share that, I became empowered. And I'm like, I'm not fearful of it. That's exactly, yeah, that happened. You want more info? I'll tell you all about it. But that's how I am who I am. So personally, I understood the value of exposing myself. And as soon as I started to share who I really was and put down that took that mask off, people started to connect. Here I am 3 years after that. I've got close to 400,000 followers, not just followers, but community, people I know, people I've gained trust with, people I DM with that I'd never met before, people that take my course and that reach out to me with like all of this stuff. So for me, as I was learning this process, I was really focused on entrepreneurs coming up and then startups. And this 313 method solves a very real problem that they have. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you can't explain what you do, it's not the best idea. Sorry. And so in working with startups, I started moving more and more up and realizing that, these startups, the entrepreneurs become executives, and I enjoy working with the executives that have the budget to pay for my fees. And so I still love entrepreneurs as they work their way to executives, but the power that is within Ditching the Act is so untapped when it comes to most leaders. And if I can convince them of the value, then it trickles down. Because my goal is not for the CEO to buy the book. My goal is for the CEO to buy the book for all of his employees so that they can come to work without ditching the act, so they can build better relationships with their managers and not ditch the act, so they can actually see results of building real relationships at work, because there's a lot of people at work that come with a mask on and they're never going to get that true relationship with their coworkers, with their managers. Yeah. And I have a great relationship with my boss. I have a great relationship with people that I work with. It's because when I'm not feeling good, I will let them know. If I'm having a hard day, they're there to support me, as opposed to, everything's fine, I'm fine, guys, leave me alone. And historically, that's always been a challenge for me. I was bullied as a kid. I was shy. Karate turned me into confidence. I played hockey, idolized Kelly Rudy. I was a goaltender. I loved the pressure. But taking those stories now and sharing them makes me like so proud of being who I am, that's priceless. And if you're not comfortable with that confidence enough to be proud and be yourself, then you're missing a huge part of life, right? You're on the wrong asteroid. You're not going to end up at your destination. You may be making a ton of money, but you're going to burn out. You're going to lose your spouse. All this stuff happens. And I'm going to bring it all back down to these exposure levels. Exposure level 1, things that you're feeling that you wouldn't necessarily share. I had 3 flights in a row speaking in multiple cities, and I was exhausted. So I said, I am exhausted. Anybody have any tips? What do you do? I got all kinds of tips. I now have new type of oils. I have one of those steamer things with misters. Like, these are just people helping me out with it, right? Level 2 is when you have conflicts with other people. So, for example, I just got in an argument with somebody. I think I won, but actually I think we both lost. People can connect with that, right? Level 3 could be something like your sexuality that you're afraid to share. But once you can come out and say, this is who I am, you can start to live your own life. And look at the example of amazing people who have had that strength to share that level 3 exposure that they've been hiding for their whole life, right? Level 4 would be something like a business gone wrong, or like being investigated by the FTC, or something that is a financial ruin, or filing for bankruptcy, or something that, like, when people find out, you might think that they're going to look at you negatively. But once you share that with them, they actually get to know you. Oh my gosh.
What's happening?
There's a freaking dolphin in the harbor. See that?
Oh, wow.
I've maybe one time I've seen a dolphin in the harbor. Wait for it. Let's see where he goes. This is crazy. Where'd he go? If you're watching this, you might have to go back on replay because it was there.
No, I've seen it up the back there, yeah. Get your dolphin sounds on the go.
You definitely do not see dolphins in the harbor. Like, I think I've seen one dolphin in the harbor. I got my head on a spindle. I'm like, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Sorry, this is a serious deal here. A dolphin in the harbor. Call Channel 9 News. This is a big deal. Wow. Okay, so let me bring this back to craziness. Like, the fact that I'm here with you and like the fact that there's a dolphin there, like that totally could have just made my day. My day can still be crazy stressful, but for me, the connection with nature and being able to sort of like be out here and just, sorry, I thought I heard him come up. Like for me, like what is life about? Life's not about working. Life's not about stress. Life's about, you know, learning and loving and being in nature and just figuring out what works for you. So that all ties into like ditching this act and trying to put on this big, you know, show of what you think people want. People don't care. People don't care about you, but they do care about the problems that you solve. So if you can find a passion for solving problems for people and you can do it in an authentic way that brings people along with you, that's the magic sauce. That's when you see a dolphin in the harbor.
I love that. Dolphin, hashtag dolphin in the harbour. Listen, I feel so privileged to have had this conversation with you. I just find it very refreshing to talk to someone like you, and just having all your years of experience distilled down is completely fascinating, and I think the search audience are going to really appreciate it as well. I'm very excited for this book, just so we definitely don't miss it. Pre-sign up for email. Where am I going?
Yeah, go to ditchtheact.com.
And the Twitter account sounds fun as well.
Yeah, at Ditch the Act, and it's literally a book. So it's like, if you want to have a conversation with a book, you can have a conversation with a book.
I think that's my Friday night sorted. Well, it's the cocktail hour is fast approaching in London. What are you doing for the rest of the day over in sunny California?
Well, I wish that I could go and have a snake bite with you. You know, that would be good. But that'll be later on. Today, it's hard for me not to be on the boat and give her a little love. So I'm probably going to go back, clean her up a little bit. So that's number one. And then I have 14 different submissions for awards that I'm putting together for the University of California, Irvine, for this large organization, because we're doing such cool stuff. And then I also have an interview for my podcast. I'm interviewing this lady who is amazing, Laura Sievert. She's out in Quincy. And yeah, so I've got a podcast lined up. I got to clean my boat. I've got to write a bunch of content, and, you know, probably circle around and see if I can find this dolphin.
All right, man, well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for doing this and coming on. And when I'm in Huntington, I hope to see you in real life. It would be amazing.